I'm Dodge Feeler, and this is The Biology of Becoming, where we bridge science and spirit, and we ask what it takes to stay human in the middle of it. We talk parenthood and building things, spirituality, frontier medicine, longevity, and the one that matters most, how to live well, how to taste the spice of life and still find it in the mundane.
Hey everyone, my name is Dodge Feeler. I am the host of Biology of Becoming, and today I have with me Celeste Bonin, my coach, former WWE diva, and now somatic coach that works with small business owners, entrepreneurs, and just anyone that's wanting to do better in life. And I am honored to have you today. So Celeste, how was your weekend? How are you doing?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm super excited to be having this conversation because when we first met, this podcast did not exist yet. So
That's true.
this is, yeah. So I've watched you step into this new, more evolved visibility. And so I'm honored to be a part of this. And we always have such dope conversations. So I'm excited to see where this goes. But yeah, I had a great weekend. I actually so I'm a part of a business conference that's based in Denver. I live in Houston. And I joined last fall. It was like a big step for me. I know we'll get into it, but I had a professional wrestling career, which is a very different, not usual career for most people. And then after I left that, I jumped into entrepreneurship in 2014. So I've been on this long journey of figuring that out. And, as you know, it's just a constant evolution,
For sure.
personal development journey. So I joined this business community last fall. And when I went, I was so intimidated. I had no idea what to expect, really wanted to present myself in a powerful way. And I actually had been invited by my coach, my business coach that I worked with for about 4 years. And then, I spent the weekend stepping out of my comfort zone, trying to network and build my professional network. And then fast forward 6 months later, I came back to another one of their big conferences this past weekend, and I felt totally different. I was like,
Hmm.
I'm not new. People are remembering me. Like, and I have this different level of confidence, and I got a little bit more courageous and bold with my outfits. And so it was good. It was really, really good. And then I got to celebrate. Then I went from Denver to South Padre Island to celebrate my boyfriend's daughter's 12th birthday. So it was a very
Beautiful.
action-packed weekend. How has your weekend been?
So my weekend is actually great. Uh, I got to spend the weekend with my son, hanging out at the river, spending time outside, be with my wife and my mother-in-law. And then I woke up to finding out that I had a one-star review, which I was quite surprised by. So, uh,
Mm.
a little frustrating because I did look back and I saw we've kind of attained the goals that
So
uh,
this was from a past client leaving a one-star
yes,
review on
yes.
your
Yeah,
for
and
your
I had
business. Okay.
yes, and I had not even seen her in over a year. So, um, yeah, I kind of look back and just realized like I've been left on red. I responded. We were left with an action that should be done, and then even my assistant was left with unread. So it was kind of interesting, but I realized that it had a lot to do with me sharing my wife's success stories in postpartum,
Mm.
and there's something about that that seems to be triggering. So, yeah, I take it a little personal because I should not, but like you, I really do care about what I'm doing, and so I went to the gym. I spent some time just sort of sitting with it, praying about it, and I slowly moved through it, and I thought it's a little funny that I get to do this conversation with you as someone who's been on a much grander scale dealing with I guess you would call haters much more than anything I've ever dealt with.
It's this is cool to talk about on the podcast because this is like something that we would talk about via text or on like one of our like on Zoom, when we're talking about you and how you show up and how you show up in your business. Because this is one of those things, like a lot of people don't realize how much a negative review can impact a business. So that's number one. And then, like, the deeper layer of it is how it affects you personally, like you knowing the relationship with the person, leaving, a one-star review, bringing down your overall, like it's kind of a big deal. And it does a couple of things. Like it helps you remember that, if you do experience a little bit of like a trigger or feel, making you overthink or kind of ruminate or spiral on like, where's this coming from? Am I doing something? But it in a really beautiful way can also help you remember that it's all about, and this is like a big lesson I learned when I was on global television wrestling for
Yeah.
WWE, that it's this opportunity to not give your power away. And it's funny that we're talking about this right now because so I listen to Joel Osteen's podcast every day. I just love him as, say whatever you want about him. Because I think that, like, I know people that love him and I know people that don't resonate with him, and everybody has their opinions, but he is such
Sure.
a powerful speaker. And I
Mm.
find that he helps me shape my mindset, especially in the mornings. And he was speaking to, I think like the entire theme of his daily podcast is like 30 minutes, and they're edited from different sermons that he's done. He's been a preacher forever. And he was talking about the concept of like not giving your power away, and it's such a basic concept, but it's kind of hard to do, especially when you're someone who puts your heart and soul into your work and your business and the relationship that you have with your clients and helping them get to where they want to go physically, mentally, emotionally. It's a lot to process because it makes you question yourself. And I experienced, I can speak to that now, obviously, because I didn't get the 1-star review, so I'm like removed from it, so I can talk about it. But I
Sure.
also have such a deep experience of dealing with that on a really large scale, like having people say really bad and negative things about me, people that don't know who I am at all and just have like this certain idea of me. So, short backstory, I started my career at age 19 in bodybuilding, and I was going to like community college and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And at 23, I got an opportunity to try out for WWE. And I had no experience in professional wrestling, but I was very athletic. I had the look, and I was very bold and courageous in my tryout. And I got a contract. And then, so I moved from Houston to Tampa, which is where the developmental program was at the time. Um, and I moved there to learn how to wrestle, to develop a character, to learn in ring skills, to become a performer. And the way that my career was launched is about 3 or 4 weeks after I got my contract and I had moved to Tampa. WWE had, so WWE is like an umbrella of shows. Their main shows are Raw and SmackDown. And then
Hmm.
they had during that time, which was in 2010, they had a few other shows. One of them was called NXT, and NXT is a totally different beast today. It's really cool to see the evolution. But back in 2010, it was a reality-based elimination show where they would take 6 rookies from the developmental program, so people that had a contract but they weren't on the main roster yet, and they would put us on live television, and you would compete for a spot on the main roster, Raw or SmackDown. And so they were getting ready to launch the third season of NXT, which was the first all women's season. And 5 days before the show went live, um, they decided to release one of the girls. During that time they were trying to kind of reform the brand to more of like a PG-13 vibe, kind of coming
Hmm.
out of the Attitude Era.
Sure.
And the woman that who I eventually took her spot, she was, and I'm not kidding, like this is her real height. She was 6'7", like, and she had done some like she was huge. Her name's Lindsay, and she had done some like independent wrestling, and they brought her in to kind of be the draw of the show. 6'7", woman wrestler. It was pretty wild to see. It was kind of she was the tallest woman I've ever seen when I first met her. And I would witness her greeting other people, especially the women. She would give you a hug and her boobs would sit right on the top of your head. Like that's how tall she was. I was like, this has
Wow.
never happened to
Wow.
me. Anyway, so she had done some stuff online that was not in alignment with that PG-13 rebranding. So they let her go, and I was just the next one in line. And I had literally never wrestled before. So I debut on live TV, international television, literally wrestling my first matches ever on live TV. And it was one of these like very defining moments in my life because it was this once in a lifetime opportunity. It was everything that I was asking for. It just happened way faster, and I felt like I wasn't ready. But I had this. It was like this decision I made where I'm like, there's no way I'm not going to give this everything I got, even if I embarrass myself. And there was a lot of very embarrassing moments. So you can find them on YouTube. I just didn't know what I was doing in the ring.
Yeah.
Um, but along with that, because I was so green and so new, and I wasn't yet a seasoned performer. I had never been, because wrestling is an art form. It's combat. It's performative combat. Yes, the outcome is predetermined, but you have to sell a story with your body, with your face, have awareness of where you are in the ring, where the cameras are, be communicating with your opponent, make everything look real and devastating while protecting your body and the person that you're wrestling. And so this was like a crash course for me. And so and Instagram wasn't really a thing. It was like Twitter. Twitter was the thing that WWE was really encouraging the talent to, to be on. And there was I had to develop such a tough skin so fast because, I don't know if you or anyone listening knows about kind of the wrestling world, but the wrestling fans are very loyal to professional wrestling, and a lot of them are very opinionated. And so there was so much to be said about me, about how bad I was in the ring, and like, and that I didn't deserve the opportunity and stuff. And so it was very, very challenging. So not only the pressure of live television, doing something I had never done before, trying to prove myself not only to the people at home watching, but also to the locker room, the creative, like the producers, and then having so many people hating on me for my lack of skills. So looking back, 16 years removed from those first wrestling matches, I'm so grateful for the process of like that experience skyrocketing me into this different level of just like connection to who I am, and just creating a really deep level of like sovereignty of really not being affected by my external reality, even though it took me a long time to get there, a long time to get there.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I love that you are. I mean, out of everything you said, it's all been very fascinating. But my favorite word you just said was sovereignty. Uh, Learning to manage all the things coming at you externally, but internally, you are still whole and you're still able to manage it. Uh, I'm gonna guess also like just wrestling did take a toll on your body as well, just because watching it more when I was younger. I had not been watching wrestling anymore at the time you were in there, but there's no way, like even if it is, staged to an extent, like it has to be really hard on the body. And I've also seen where there's been a lot of, just neck injuries and other things going on.
Mhm.
But what did you learn to do to manage the stress of, going out in front of everybody and,
Yeah.
you know, you have to make sure that whatever, you're speaking some, you're acting, and then on top of that, whatever happens, someone's gonna have something to say about it.
Yeah. Well, so before I get into that, I wrote it down so I don't forget it. Kind of, I think what we were speaking to a few minutes ago, before I got to tell a little bit about my origin story of how I started as a professional wrestler, is this is a conversation that you and I have a lot, around when you do have someone that is openly, saying something bad about you or your business, or, sharing an opinion that's not necessarily easy to hear. Um, you being the subject of that, my view of that now, and it's much easier said than done. And again, like you and I have talked about this in a lot of different scenarios, but when you have haters like this person that left you a 1-star review on your business, and
Mhm.
somebody people having something to say about how you show up online, or how I wrestle in the ring or whatever, it takes a little bit of time to really see this and feel this on a deep level. But anytime you are doing something that is eliciting a response or creating a hater out of someone,
Mhm.
it's a compass, or it's a sign to you that you are doing something worthy of creating, ruffling a couple feathers, making people feel uncomfortable, or kind of um evoking that part of someone that is unhealed. And so, in a lot of ways, it can kind of be an affirmation to you to keep going, to keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing something that matters. You're doing something, because it's really easy to go online and create a persona, or go in the ring and create a persona that is very likable. It's because you're not saying, the things that maybe you really want to say. You're not expressing yourself in the way that you really want to express yourself, out of fear of rejection or haters. So when you can walk that path of saying, I am who I am. These are the things I believe. The work that
Hmm.
I'm doing in the world matters and it impacts people, and it's going to ruffle some feathers. It's going to upset some people. I think that that's a great indication to keep going. That's like, like it's funny. It'd be like, I got my first hater, or I got my first group of haters, or whatever. Like it's a badge of honor, and it's also a testament to your inner strength. And if you allow it to be a vehicle to help you continue to step into that version of yourself that is unafraid to say the things that you want to say, because it is helping people and it is showing people who you can be, or who they can be, without that fear of getting a 1-star review, or somebody tweeting something bad about you, or DMing you something. So I think, if for anybody listening, and for you and I to remember, it's like it's a good sign, as long as you are aligned to you and what you know to be true in your heart, and what you believe to be true, and what you feel like your mission is, in terms of like what you're here to do and what you're here to say in your life. um and going to the second part of your question, or the question you just asked around managing stress. I did not have any tools to manage stress. I was
Mm.
23 when I got my contract, and I was just launched into this live television, global travel, pressure of show business. And I say this sometimes because I still do a lot of interviews in the wrestling world, talking about my career then, and what I'm doing now. And something that I typically say is, that I speak to, is I felt more pressure backstage than I ever did when I was wrestling in the ring in front of thousands of people live and millions of people at home, because I constantly felt like I was needing to prove that I deserved to be there, and that I was
Mhm.
somebody of value. And when I was 23, I didn't have a really strong sense of self. I didn't have a really strong understanding of what my message is. And so I did my first 3 years. My first contract was a 3-year contract, and then I had the title in 2013, and I re-signed, and I signed another 3-year contract. And then I ended up cutting my career short, 2 years left on my contract, my second contract, asking for my release in 2014, because I was folding under the pressure. I was 30 pounds heavier than the weight I was when I first got my contract. Um, I felt I had little to no confidence. I was very emotionally dysregulated. And looking back, and I didn't know what was happening. I just knew that I couldn't keep going. And my body, I was constantly inflamed, and, I was gaining weight, and I didn't know, my background was in bodybuilding, and I had this very fit identity. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden, my body is telling me like there's something wrong. And looking back, I didn't have tools to properly manage the adrenaline that I was experiencing, the super high level of stress and comparison. And with any level of show business, or high level sport, professional sport, the stakes are high. And there's, at that time, now it's a lot different, but at that time, Raw was a 3-hour show, and the women would only have 5 to 7 minutes on a 3-hour show. And so we were all fighting and there was only one title. So we were all fighting for relevance, for time on screen, so we could, build a fan base and have people care about women's wrestling. And so it was very cutthroat too. And so I was constantly under pressure, and I just didn't know, you know, when I was really in the thick of my career, where I was doing well, and I was booked a lot, and when I had the title, I was really only home like 36 to 48 hours a week, if that. And so I didn't really have the time to um, reset, and I didn't have the tools to do that either. So ultimately, it led to me leaving my career early, because I just was like, I need to figure out what's happening, you know. Um, so the ring beats you up, and the travel really beats you up, but most of my wounds, or the pain I experienced in my body, was from stress, cortisol, and
Yeah.
not being able to process the adrenaline.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. We constantly you're finding out what is the source, what is the root cause of the issue, the pathological, condition, and it's almost always going to come back down to stress, especially in today's society. And
Yes.
it's funny because you and I have very similar conversations. I'd even say just like this coming up today before we chat, we talk a lot about grand design or divine design, and I don't think it was by mistake that this happened. So like, oh, what are we going to talk about today? It made it really easy. And it's also, we also spend a lot of time like, you're very mindful. You spend a lot of time in prayer, and I would imagine during that time you did not. So did you have to sit with that for a while after, or did it take years later for you to be able to take the time to integrate everything that happened during this period?
Yeah, that's a great question. I spent years trying to process my experience that I had. Like I didn't know how I felt about like it would because it was this big for a very long time, I carried this feeling, this weight of feeling like I didn't do enough with my platform. Like I didn't, I didn't really know who I was. I could have made a bigger impact. I could have built a more intentional audience. Like I could have done more with a global platform. And, during my time, I was just trying to survive each day. I was just trying to get through the match. And, so I carried that for a long time of like, it was kind of three things. It was I didn't do enough while I was there. And like I had this amazing opportunity, could have done so much more, and could have had a longer, more meaningful career. Another thing I really struggled with was, what if I never do anything of this caliber ever again? And that's it. Like I peaked.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was really dealing with was identity. Like, who am I without this? And that has kind of really been a theme for many, many years of like, who am I without this identity? Yeah, and you and I were speaking to this before you hit record. It's kind of been this shadow that I've been trying to work my way out of, because I am so much more than Caitlin, that was my wrestling character,
Absolutely.
who really was just me because I didn't know what I was doing and I was just figuring it out as I was going. So, dealing with all these things, and I was also trying to reinvent myself. So within 6 months of leaving, I got married. I went into my first marriage, I got married very fast, and I started a business. I started a clothing company called Celestial Bodies, which
Mhm.
flourished in the first few years. And it was when Instagram was in a different time,
Mhm.
2015, 2016, the golden years of Instagram. And I had Miss Bikini Olympia on my athlete team. Like it was my opportunity to reinvent myself. This was, let me step into business. Let me create something meaningful. Let me design clothes. I was designing custom clothes. So when I was wrestling, I would have the seamstresses. So this little ruching in the seam of my shorts or my pants that would make a
Mhm.
little scrunch design that would hug my curves, and just anything that could help me
Yeah.
feel more confident. I struggled a lot with my body image a lot when I was there on television. And when I left, I was really trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and I knew I wanted to try to dip my toes into business, figure out what that was like, what can I create in the world of business. And so I took that concept, and at the time, that little scrunch was only in competition swimsuits, and it was starting to be put in bikinis. So I took that and I put it into leggings, because I was in the fitness world, and
Yeah.
so nobody was doing it yet. And so I launched Celestial Bodies. That was my clothing company. And I created the booty scrunch legging. And so in 2014, I created the very first booty scrunch legging, and now
You
it's like a
started this.
global trend. And I
It's
got a
everywhere
patent
now.
on it. It took me years to get a patent, and so I could only ever get a design patent, and I kept getting rejected for a utility patent. And so in fashion, you can really only protect your design if you have a utility patent. And within like the first like 3 to 6 months, I already had a lot of companies making their own version of them. But yeah, the booty scrunch legging I took because it was in my wrestling outfits. I took that and I put it into leggings and shorts, and I was the home of the booty scrunch legging. But I even though I was creating all this success and building a personal brand and a business, and I was reestablishing myself in the world of fitness, which was truly my vision ever since I was a teenager. I started lifting weights when I was 15. I had a track coach who was a fitness competitor, and I wanted to be exactly like her, and she mentored me and she taught me how to lift. And this was before Instagram. So I had never really seen anybody that looked like her before. And she was so strong and jacked and lean. And I wanted to be like her. And so my identity was very much athlete fitness. And
Mhm.
so after I left WWE, I really created a name for myself in the fitness industry, especially with my booty scrunch leggings. Even though I was having all this success, I was still deeply, deeply struggling with processing my time in WWE, feeling like at the end of the day that I was a failure. I left,
Mhm.
before my contract was up, and I felt like I could have done more. And I was also like, I hadn't really processed my time there. And really, we all have things that happen to us in our childhoods and as we're growing up as teenagers, and I had never processed any of that stuff.
Mhm.
And so all of that started to really come to the surface. And I was at this time in my late 20s, and my marriage was a mess. I didn't know how to communicate. I was dealing internally with all this stuff. And so the outside,
Mhm.
my life looked amazing. Um, my first husband and he had a supplement company, and I had this fitness brand, and we were like the king and queen, and we were on the cover of Iron Man magazine. And then I got a cover with when it was just me, and I was featured as a entrepreneur, and I was like,
Yeah.
damn, I'm like making it, I'm reinventing myself, but internally I was struggling so bad. And my marriage was so toxic, and we there was a lot of substance abuse, and very little communication, and ultimately ended really badly. And after my first marriage ended, I kind of hit like a rock bottom point. This was in 2018, so about 8 years ago, where I was the heaviest I had ever been. Right now, I walk around at like 140 pounds. I was 174 pounds. My skin was really bad. I was so depressed. I was starting to get panic attacks. And like there was this really huge sign that I needed to start looking at my stuff and like asking the questions that I'd never asked myself before. And this was really kind of like my spiritual awakening, or my awakening in general, to like
Mhm.
this, so I'm 30, I'm about to be 40. So I'm 39 now. 8 years ago, it was early 30s, 30, 31. Took me 30 years to start asking myself questions like, what do I actually want for my life? Like, what does that actually look like versus kind of just doing the thing that I thought I should do? So it was a lot of deep introspection starting to happen around that time in 2018.
It's really interesting how similar our paths are. Obviously, very different career-wise, but you know, it's very similar with my life. About to get divorced. There's substance abuse, not looking at myself at all, and I'm sure that's one of the many reasons the universe brought us together. In the ways that it did. But everything you're saying, it's just kind of giving me goosebumps because I'm realizing what you've been through. A lot of people have been through. You've just
Hmm.
been on the grand stage the whole time. And I know that the first marriage you probably had not had time to really look at anything, your childhood, much less your career as a diva. And then you went into the third before you went to a second marriage. But I believe during that time you were starting to look at things, correct? The kind of like the
Yeah.
hidden door was moving into coaching. You did mention another thing that's not going to be in your bio is psychedelics kind of snuck in and kind of showed you a new way to kind of find out what is that pain that's being held in, which
Yeah.
is a similar path for me as well, which makes it very interesting.
It's cool to kind of, so you and I have talked about this privately, but this is not something I talk about a lot on social media, or really in my content, or really on any podcast or interviews, because it's psychedelics are such a deep personal experience, and
Mhm.
a lot of time it's ineffable. It's really hard to describe, and it's, for me, it's such an intimate part of myself, and how I've it evolved my relationship with God, and it just profoundly changed me. But so 2018, very, very rock bottom. Had gone through my first divorce, really struggling to get it together. Had started, I read Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now 50
Mhm.
times cover to cover, and it really started to open me up and help me um, start to uh, disidentify from my thoughts, and just kind of witness them and realize that. And that was what was causing my panic attacks, was like these
Mhm.
really insidious thoughts and these thought spirals. Um, and so that, that kind of opened the door for me to start exploring these alternative healing modalities. And I got really into Wim Hof breath work and ice baths, and I started smoking cannabis at night, and kind of exploring my relationship with cannabis, and
Mhm.
just like working through a lot of stuff. And then in 2019, I during this time also, like, was really trying to figure out who I was in business. And so Celestial Bodies, I had rebranded it a few times, and I just really didn't feel super connected to it being like my forever life path. And I knew I started to feel hungry for something more substantial, like a work or a career that felt more fulfilling. And I on the side had started to do some consulting and coaching of other it started as other like influencers that were wanting to bring a product to market, like I had with Celestial Bodies. And I was like, I felt for the first time in my life, I felt very excited about that kind of coaching container. And I felt very connected to that process, like sharing my experience and helping, like kind of synthesizing my own process and sharing it with somebody else to help them elevate themselves and their career. And so that was kind of the doorway into actually starting to coach. I started really coaching in 2020. The more I started to um, discover more about myself. And so I was teaching a lot around like mindset and some biohacking stuff, and starting to, knock on that door. And then also in 2020, I had my first very intense plant medicine experience. I was doing a lot of research around ayahuasca,
Hmm.
watching documentaries, and I was still processing so much pain. And I had a lot of issues in my second marriage as well. It wasn't near what my first marriage was, but there was just these patterns that kept showing up. And I started to realize like these are things within me. And I had my first 5-MeO DMT Bufo experience in
Hmm.
2020. The ceremony was actually a gift, was given to me as a gift the day before. 5-MeO DMT found me, but I had started to open the door to what psychedelics and plant medicines were. And then I had this really intense psychedelic era of my life from 2020 to 2023. And so myself and my second husband, that was kind of our journey together. And we were like, we had gotten so close to our shaman. She actually founded a psychedelic church in Austin, called ATMA, All Tribes Medicine
Hmm.
Assembly. And she
Hmm.
had done the majority of our medicine ceremonies, and she was like family to us. And we actually asked her to officiate our wedding. And so we got married in a psychedelic church by our shaman
Wow. Wow.
and at the end of 2022. So yeah, like psychedelics are such a huge part of who I am today because of the profound effect it had on, my healing process. And, you and I have talked
Hmm.
about, how much plant medicine has really allowed us to connect with God and to connect with something greater and source. And I remember it wasn't I think it maybe was the first one, the first Bufo experience I had, 5-MeO DMT, which is the venom from a cane toad. Um, I couldn't fully surrender in that experience. I wasn't quite ready to fully surrender in the medicine that first time, but my second, um, I was doing them about 6 months apart. My second Bufo experience, I had a full surrender. And when I came out of that ceremony, I um, had this whole new relationship with God. And what I realized is that I had closed my heart to having a relationship with God for many,
Yeah.
many years, because of how much pain I was going through. I almost felt like not loved or not seen or not recognized. And um by the divine, I guess. It's hard to describe or articulate, but after my second experience, I just felt so held and
Mm.
so almost like small, but in a good way, like in like the hands of the divine. So you know I it's easy for me to have these really deeper conversations, even if they're not about plant medicine directly, with other people who have experienced that type of medicine, because it's just like a club.
For sure. For sure.
And yeah, again, you can speak to that too. Like you really can.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because my first situation, I did actually surrender because it was multiple rounds. The first few, I realized my biggest attachments, interestingly, were my mom and my brother, who I do love dearly. But by the end of it, it was a white light being held.
Mm,
Fascinating. And when I did it again later on, because I worked through that, the next thing I knew is I was singing like I was in a choir. I would come out of it singing, which was strange because
Wow.
that was when I started. I mean, you know how much I care about art and everything. That was sort of where I just started going through. But yeah, it's just, you know, like you hold all that pain and all the things that you think are, you know, the stories we tell ourselves, or, you know, the actual trauma. We hold it all in, and then there's something about doing that where you're just blasting off, and it's like you realize what you've been holding all that on and all that time. And when you release it, suddenly you get to start finding out who I am, who am I behind all that. And
Hmm.
I don't know about you, I'd love to hear how you felt this, but when I started doing that, I started just diving into all the spiritual marketplace, Kundalini, Tantra, like all of the crazy stuff that's out there. And then at one point, I started reading about Stephen Hawkins, where he was talking about enlightenment and how you get to a certain place where you can't even relate to people anymore. And I'm like, wait a second, I want to have a family. And so I realized, like, I want to have a grounded theology in mind, and something that we both talk about because we love Neville Goddard, and I would say we love Jesus as our teacher. Is just realizing we have the divine spark inside of us. You know, we are the power, but we have to trust the power without of us. You know, it's the empowerment is I am that I am. And then trusting beyond is the humility.
Yeah.
That's like at the basis of all that. That's what it comes back to.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, and I think this is most people's journey, and even outside of plant medicine, is that, you kind of get cracked open through really significant pain or grief, or, something significant has to happen in your life for you to kind of dive deeper into you're trying to find how to heal, how to live, how to have a different experience with life after enduring so much pain. And then and that was me too. Like I was part of a psychedelic church. I was all of, and I was exploring chakras and, like, just really expanding the way that I thought and exploring different ideologies and different ways of viewing the divine and trying to understand it from this universal perspective. And sometimes you can get really lost in that, and you can,
Mhm.
like, to speak to what you're saying, like, you can feel very ungrounded in that world. And then I think the maturation of that kind of spiritual awakening process is then finding your place again in the material world, and, like, walking that line, or being that bridge between this deep, profound spiritual dimension that you've accessed through whatever your doorway was, psychedelics, grief, pain, profound joy, whatever it is. And then trying to always hold that, or have that, I think, that expansiveness in your heart, but still be very uh available in your life to your family and to your work and to your clients. So it's this finesse of, it's like that big pendulum swing. Like, so for me, I was
Mhm.
like really closed off, super closed off heart, very dense. I didn't have any relationship with anything beyond what my eyes could see and what my ears could hear. And then kind of going through this really intense suffering, and then finding a doorway through plant medicines, and then swinging to this whole other end of the spectrum, and then finding my way back kind of in this center point of how it can actually move through the world. And yeah, I think it's really this maturation process, of learning how to be present in both. And it's interesting that you brought up, Stephen Hawking, and I don't know which. So Eckhart Tolle has a trilogy of books. The first one is Power of Now, and then there's two more. And I've read all of them, but I read the first one many, many times. And I don't remember which book it is, but he talks about this moment where he's holding the door open in, like, a cafe or a restaurant, and it's for Stephen Hawking. And he had this moment where he looked into his eyes and could see that he was free, like his spirit was free, like he was, um like he had the light of God in his eyes. And I thought that was, I loved that. It just, I don't know what it was, but it spoke to me so much, because I think the more you open yourself up to God and something beyond what you can see and hear, you start to recognize that spark in other people. And it really is through the clarity of the eyes. And
Absolutely.
so I just think it's interesting that you brought that up, because it's one of my favorite things that I read in his
Yeah.
books.
Oh, it's amazing. I think one thing about like the psychedelics, it's before psychedelics became a little more mainstream and allowed outside of what the tribes are doing is mostly near death experiences. Kind of choosing to do a bufo is sort of, it's like you're experiencing a near death experience to kind of wake up.
Your body thinks you're dying.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I think it's just a realization. Like it's kind of like what a gift that we have that available to us. Thankfully to the tribes where a lot of them they didn't even use this stuff unless they like lost a child or something. Like it was not something that was used regularly. But in America, we tend to need a little more help. Um,
Mm.
but also, what you just said about the eyes is, absolutely nice, but just also just if you can walk through the world and do your best to see God in every single person, it really changes your perspective. And even with the scenario today, it helps with moving to forgiveness and just understanding much faster, and it makes your life much easier too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, like, um, both in medicine and not in medicine, some of my most like profound shifts in my state of being, like were just like really profound,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it, like big shifting moments, is where I've been able to see or understand my interaction with another person as God working through someone as
Mhm.
a directly. And so that kind of perspective is so powerful in the kind of the spectrum of life experience, like really difficult stuff, like where the depths that it takes you to, the suffering, the questioning, the uncertainty, and then also to like your most joyful moments, like your most, heart-opening moments. Like I think that's something that I continually come back to and try to bring that and into more of the mundane moments of my life of like
Mhm.
seeing, you know, God or source working with me and speaking to me and communicating to me through my clients, through my dying mother,
Yeah.
through pets, through my intimate relationships, and it's one of my favorite things to do is to kind of be in that understanding.
No, I think you just like nailed it all. Like it's fun to go play in consciousness and see the wild, expansive things that are out there. But then the actual most spiritual thing you can do is to quit looking for the numbers and the signs and just be present with the people around you, have the prayer that God is moving through you. And it's funny because when you stop looking for it, the magic happens the most during that time. I think about
Yeah,
the discovery call when you came in and it's like you just, how did you find me? But it was you, you were a prayer answered. And I wasn't looking for anything. I was doing my day-to-day coffee shop working and being with my kids. And it is the most spiritual thing you can truly do is living your life in the mundane. But you get to
yeah.
create the mundane, make it one that you love.
I think so. I think that this concept is so wonderful to speak to and to connect on, but I also think that it's sometimes very distant to
Yeah.
a lot of people, even to myself, and in your own experience too. And this is actually why I do what I do now. So it took me a long time to discover, like a lot of pain and suffering, to discover that just changing my mind was not enough, because the continual pattern of painful things that were
Mhm.
unfolding in my life, I started to see a pattern. And so even though I was opening my heart and trying these different things and meditating and changing and expanding my mind, I was still find myself stuck in these painful patterns, whether it was in with my relationship with money, my actual intimate relationship, with my body. I suffered for a long time with chronic pain. And so the coach, for anyone listening, the coaching that I do now is so I'm a movement coach. And so with my private clients, part of the work that I do is teaching them how to engage and release their fascia, which is connective tissue. Your connective tissue holds every part of your body together, muscles, bones, organs, and your nervous system runs through your fascia. So your fascia, this thin connective tissue that's holding your entire body together, is a living record of everything you've ever experienced: acute injuries, painful emotional dynamics. It's it is a living record of your traumatic experiences. And so so, I was on this healing journey, breath work, kind of biohacking stuff, ice baths, plant medicine. And even though I was really healing and liberating myself, I was still stuck. I was still stuck in a lot of ways. I was still stuck in intimate. I've been divorced twice. There was something, I was still really finding myself in these same repeating patterns. And so it led me to study more, like all these different modalities led me to study movement and to start studying the actual physical connection, um, to my emotions, to my mindset, to my actual experience. And this led me to discover fascia. And the more that I started to work with my actual physical body, I was starting to alleviate myself of chronic pain, which I thought was either from throwing myself around in the ring and having such a high level of stress in my WWE
Mhm.
career, and lifting for years and years from when I was 15. Or my other conclusion was that I just have fibromyalgia. My grandmother was diagnosed with fibromyalgia at the age of 30, and it's kind of her identity. And so the more that I studied movement and applied it and started to learn to hold my body in different postures and to have more intentional dynamic movement, I started to alleviate the chronic pain that I was having, lower back, neck. It would travel all the way up my right arm,
Mhm.
hip pain. And then as I was releasing these compensations and areas of my body that were holding on to the literal pain, my life started changing. And so I started to really have this larger understanding that the our body is the physical metaphor for how we interact with the world, and how we, um like, our emotional state, right? So that's what led me to doing the type of coaching that I do now. And this is the point of me saying all this, is that a lot of people they have so much stuck in their connective tissue, in their nervous system, that it's hard to have these profound realizations and relationships with the mundane in life, because their body is holding on to the pain, the grief, the suffering, whether it's
Mhm.
something that actually happened in their lives, or this is like an ancestral thing that's been passed down, or and so I think it is hard for some people who have not explored the connection of our physical body to our energy body and our mind and our spirituality. It's very easy to feel stuck in pain or just stagnancy. um, and so that's, I mean, and when I kind of made that discovery, I felt like more than ever before, I was really connected to what I'm here to do with my life, and my work is helping people actually make that deeper connection to their body, to open up the energetic channel along their spine so that they can have that divine connection, that divine to, divine source energy, and downloads and ideas. Um and that's what I'm extremely passionate about.
Yeah. Well, I am a good testament to it. I do not use your videos as often as I should, but I mean, I'm sure you can think of like multiple meetings we've had, and I have used them. I have used them, without you, but sometimes I'll be having so much pain in my hips or my neck, and it's always hilarious as you're like, okay, I know exactly what to do, and we'll do the movements, and it's somewhere between yoga and twerking, and I always
True.
wonder if my neighbors are
True.
watching. I'm like, I think they probably think this is hilarious to see, but
Yes.
next thing I know, I'm actually moving through whatever it is I'm holding that week, which is just it's fascinating. And I think it's a service that many people could really benefit from because I mean, weightlifting is a great way to to get rid of the of anger or whatever, but moving in with the fashion a different way, which is it's actually our world, like it's I think next to skin, it's like the largest organ, which wrapping
Mhm.
around all the muscles and the organs, and it's becoming a very big topic right now. So I think that you were a little bit ahead of your game when you started using it.
Yeah, that's true for you too, though. Like, you think about everything you've done in your career, you're probably like a little bit at that kind of the front lines
Yeah.
of, if you think about your business now, way of life, the way that you treat people. Same thing with me, and that's what makes that is a challenge in itself, because it's not
Mhm.
something that everyone understands yet, and that it
But
kind of
everyone's
that actually
talking about it.
ties. Yeah,
Everyone,
yeah.
everyone knows fashion now.
Yeah, and it's a blessing, because the more people that speak to it, the more I learn, the more people that are open to what I do and what I teach and what I speak on. Um, and it's I'm really happy about it because like I just went to this business conference and I had the opportunity to be a contributor. And so I held um, a discussion and then had a little mini mastermind with three different groups of people. And I went through some posture engagements there was like 10 or 12 people in each of the groups. And I was, one of the first questions I was asking is like, have you heard of fascia? Everyone's like, yeah. And so it allowed me to take them into a deeper experience, to have like a deeper energy and body shift with, in a 20-minute conversation. So it's like kind of allowing me to with opportunity. It gives me the opportunity for the people that I meant to influence and help
Yeah.
with my gifts, that I find that people are more open and receptive to it. And then if you can help somebody experience an energy shift in a 10-20 minute session or window of time, it's like it's just a powerful testament to the work. And so yeah, there's a lot of people that are way more open and available to it. And you know I have this shadow of like the bigness of my WWE career.
Hmm.
So a lot, like a big majority of my following, like on Instagram, is my biggest social media channel. A lot of those people know me as Caitlin or as the professional wrestler and don't necessarily have the ears or the eyes to understand what I speak to now.
Right.
And so it's been a big journey for me to stay consistent with the things that I'm very passionate about and what my coaching is and what I teach and what I do, even though sometimes it does fall on deaf ears. And so it's been kind of been this finesse in content creation of trying to understand these kind of sub niches of people that follow me, and trying to um, get this message across of the connection between the body and our minds and our emotions and in our lives and our how we show up in our businesses and professionally. So that's kind of like my ongoing challenge.
It's kind of part of the integration, right? You probably, I mean, again, don't let me put words in your mouth, but actually, the last session we did, you were like, I feel like there's something you were supposed to let out here. And I realized it was the version of Dodge that was heavy into bodybuilding and very angry and what we were just talking about, the divorce. And I've had to let him back out. And now I'm trying to integrate him and figure out how do I let that anger become a good source of productivity and just, not be something that's damaging. So I'm wondering, I'm guessing you still have to let Caitlin out. You still have to let her be around because she actually is still very powerful. She actually, she was what started you. So how has that worked? How's that? Is that part of kind of like the subscription channel that you're working on? I mean, tell me a little bit about that, please.
That's a cool question. So I think the version of myself that I was when I stepped into this wrestling career of just like literally having no experience, no idea what to do, no idea, and just having this like ballsiness just to go for it, like that is the quality and that is the
Mhm.
characteristic that I am now finding that it is my edge. This like so, within probably the past year, I've evolved so much in how I show up to these business conferences, to the way that I create content with a much higher level of audacity. For a long
Yeah.
time, as I was trying to establish and refine myself as a coach and be accepted more in the business community, to grow my network, to be respected as a coach, I thought I needed to really kind of cage this audacious version of myself.
Mhm.
And for a long time, it was the right feedback and advice for me because I did have a lot to learn in terms of learning how to speak about what I do and being eloquent and, learning how to sell my coaching and all of these kind of intricacies of being an entrepreneur and having a service, right? A very unique service. And then I'm a part of a couple different business communities and masterminds. And over the past year, I would get feedback on like, maybe every year or so, I'll kind of do a rebrand, or maybe every 6 months, I'll do a rebrand of how I show up online. I'll redo my website, etc. And so I'll ask for feedback in some of these business groups that I'm in. And one of the most recent times that I did like a rebrand, which was at the beginning of 2026, the feedback I got was very similar to the feedback I was getting for years. Is like, you're a little bit too much. You're not relatable. Maybe
Mhm.
don't show as much, or I can't relate to that. And I'm like, well, yeah, this is like a broken record. This is what I always hear. And then I started my inner self was kind of like rebelling against that. And I'm like, but the part that makes people feel not like that makes them feel like they can't relate to me is the part of that is so powerful. The part of me that's like the David Goggins within me that's so disciplined to train my ass off five days a week
Mhm.
and be so disciplined with my health and fitness. That's what makes me great. To feel like I can express myself and dress the way that I dress, even in
Mhm.
a very serious business setting, is part of what makes me great. It's like having a little audacity to be who I am. And it's not about being relatable. It's about showing people who I am, and who they can be if they kind of release the fear of judgment or rejection or ridicule or not being professional enough or whatever. And so I started really feeling this rebelliousness against that feedback in these communities of people
Mhm.
who I respect. And I'm like, no offense, but like I don't want everybody to relate to me. I want people to want to learn from me of how they can be unrelatable, how they can be setting the standard in the bar. And so I started to really feel way more confident about this feeling that was coming through when I was getting this feedback. And it kind of like broke through this barrier for me. And so um, I'm right now on this journey of creating more so of like, I guess you can call it more of like my legacy project, which is, you know, I love doing my one-on-one coaching, but there's only so much. I can only scale that so much until I'm only one person and I serve my private clients in a very high level. So to grow, there has to be another formula, another way of doing what I do. And so I've been in this journey of figuring out what my subscription content channel will look like. I wish it was something I did 5 years ago, but I wasn't who I am now 5 years ago. It wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have had this edge and this deep wisdom that I have now. And so, kind of my challenge is creating content, like premium content that is for these different sub niches of people that follow me and love my content, whether they're in this wrestling category or they're really into the health, wellness, movement, vitality stuff, and kind of making something, essentially monetizing off my likeness, which kind of worked my ass off my entire career. And then also finding a way to get what I'm so passionate about, body information, movement, posture, relieving chronic pain and tension, longevity. If I can package that in a way that reaches way more people, that's not on this, higher level investment, private one-on-one, um, you know, portal of how I work now, then that's where I'll be able to have so much more creative freedom and get to play around more with my artistic version of myself, which is, where you're at too with your music and your self-expression and your writing and your content creation. So I think for both of us and probably a lot of people that are on a similar journey in their life, um, that it's really about embracing this edginess, this inner artist, and weaving that into the knowledge, wisdom, experience that we've earned throughout our past 20 years of our career, and then truly monetizing on that, and then helping people on a larger scale, and also just like enjoying it, like having so much fun as a creator. um so yeah, that's where I'm at. Like I finally, at the beginning of this year, started to kind of break out of the shell of like worrying about being too audacious in the way I express myself, and just being like, that is literally my edge. That is why people are energetically attracted to me, because deep down, there's a part of them that wants to be free. That part of them wants to be free and express and make that a part of how they, create their life.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, there's a sea of people all trying to fit in the same little box, right? And we are not here to be at the beat of someone else's drum. We're to be at the beat of our own drums, and that's probably a big reason why we have been attracted to each other. I've never really felt like I fit in exactly, and so you and I are two peas in a pod. Uh, but that is what makes you
Yeah.
stick out, you know? Wear the outfit that is not going to fit in at a business conference. And most likely you're gonna, I'm gonna guess you'll probably have some haters. You're gonna say, "Oh, that's not appropriate," but they're probably gonna get a
Yes.
lot of head turning and like, "Hey, can I take a picture with you?" You know? And yeah, I always love to find like little pieces. Like I don't go too crazy like with colors a lot of time, but Victoria's, I was like, Dodge, that doesn't, you can't wear that with us. Like I'm going to wear that with that.
It's so funny. One of my there's a guy that I worked with last year. His name is Mike. He's a music teacher, and he's like launching a podcast, but he's an educator too, and he's a musician, and he's all of these things. And I've really watched him like step out of this mold of who he needed to be to elevate himself in the world of education as a teacher, and really embrace this like rock star celebrity version
Yeah.
of himself. And I was posting on Instagram, I had got these new white or cream colored knee high boots for the business conference, and I was posting about him, and
Mhm.
he sent me a text, and he was like, I'm all about that conference swag, because he wears these really
It was
crazy
awesome.
bright suits and shoes, and I was like, yes. And it's so funny because like I remember when he was getting these cool opportunities during the time that we were working together, he was like getting booked for conferences and presentations and stuff, and he would send me a snapshot of his outfits, and it's like, without a doubt, he was the most wildly dressed person at these conferences, but it worked for him. Like, he was
Yeah.
having so much fun, and people like, this is something, and this is something that I work with my clients on, is like the the way that you brand yourself through how you actually show up to the physical world, the way you style your hair, the way your body looks, the clothes that you wear, like it's a game. Like
Hmm.
for a while, and I still kind of do this, I was wearing bolo ties all the time. And my thought process was, people I want this to become a signature part of my wardrobe and how I express, because I want people to when they see a bolo tie, not even on me, in a window on somebody else, to think of me. I wanted to that, and that,
Hmm.
it's power, right? So when you can start to brand yourself in these ways that feel really authentic, and that maybe they're a little bit outside of the box, you start to create this magnetism. People,
Hmm.
that their attention is gravitating towards you because there's something about you. You have the audacity, the bravery to be a little too much, or a little different, or a little audacious, and that is what I feel is contributing to my personal power, to the presence that I have, to when I walk in a room, like my energy shifts the entire room, 300 people, 500 people, and that is power at the end of the day. So I know you and I have talked about your style evolution, and the way that you recently had a keynote speech,
Hmm.
and you were looking really fly. You had some new jewelry on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's new jewelry. And when you first started talking to me about it, I just realized I've never owned a pair of Jordans, and Jordan was by far one of my favorite basketball players ever. And I think I have four pairs of them now, and that's kind of just, I don't know. Next keynote, we'll see where I'm at, but for the time being, I think that's the move. And yeah, you've just helped me really embrace like I can like jewelry, which I already there. I've already had like some stuff, just like my wedding ring I had designed by a jeweler, but it's giving yourself permission to look a little different. It's key, it's healing, and it's also just invigorating. It's freeing to be able to just
Yes.
express whatever way that you want to. And it's that permission is something that the West Texas boy really did need. So
Yes. Invigorating. That's like a
yeah,
great way to
yeah,
describe it.
it's like, oh, I can do this. Someone might say something, but others are gonna like it, and at the same time, it's not for them. It's for you. Do you like it? Does it feel good on you? That's why I asked when Victoria says, "You, what do you think about this?" And I'll say she looks great, but I was like, "How do you feel in it? Do you feel good in it? If so, then
Hmm.
wear it. Who cares what everybody else says? If they're hating, like they're probably jealous, unfortunately."
Yeah. Yeah. Because, like, yeah, and like, last thing I'll say to this, but I'm obviously very passionate about it. When you are dressing in a way that is really an expression of your soul, like your authentic frequency, you move different.
Yeah.
you're more fluid in your movements. You're more confident when you speak. It's easier to talk about what you do. It's easier to get clients and to build
Mhm.
partnerships and to be seen and respected in a different way. It's like the more comfortable you can feel in this kind of like peacocking energy, the
Mhm.
more fluidity you'll have in the way that you move through a room and the way that you show up on, and even in like content
Yeah.
creation, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like it's all about the energy and the vibration of how that expression, the physical expression, makes you feel.
I'm gonna end that like just when you say that, me letting myself do that, or even just it's not like F it, but it's sort of just do it. Like when I do my videos now, I used to be so tight and just so wound up. I would never be able to get it out. And now I wear the hat, do the thing, and then just let it fly and just trust that it's gonna land where it's supposed to land. And you
Yes,
taught me
yeah.
that.
I mean, there's such a freedom in making content like that because it's like kind of like you take the pressure off. But another thing that I always think about, and I get into conversations with people about this because it's such a powerful perspective. Like if you think about like the people you like the most on social media, you like their stuff because of how it makes you feel.
Hmm.
So when you put yourself into a certain energetic state, when you're creating content, whether it's like a carousel that you're building in Canva or you're doing a speaking directly to the camera or whatever, the more you can be in a state of being that feels really good, that's grounded, that where you feel confident, you feel good, the better your content will do because that energy that you are creating your content with is what people will feel on the other side of the screen. So it's normal in the journey of being a content creator, and really everybody's a content creator, especially if you have a brand or a business, or everyone's a personal brand. So it's normal on the journey of being a content creator to feel nervous, to feel self-conscious, to be kind of like second guessing either your message, how you look, how you're speaking, how you're showing up, whatever. And that's part of the process. But the more you can understand that the energy that goes into the creation of it is the energy that people will feel on the other side, the more permission you give yourself to kind of like have fun and to actually enjoy it and to like be speaking with an open heart, you know, and
Yeah.
walls down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just embracing it. It's we all have this creator inside of us. There's this art inside just waiting to come out. And sort of like what my music teacher told me when I first started singing, and she sort of was like, you have really significant range, but she said, anyone can sing. You just have to do it. You have to embrace it and learn how to do it. It's just waiting.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm
Um,
excited to see your
yeah.
music evolution too.
Yeah, I will see where that goes, but I'm here for it. We're running a little late, but I did want to just touch on, you are a somatic practitioner. We both work with the body. You're working somatically, and I tend to work at the cellular level. But we did work together briefly, where it's rather than you helping me somatically, I did help you with my practice. And if you're open to, I just love to hear your experience with it and what you saw as someone who already does. I mean, yeah, you're almost 40 like me, and I would say we are killing it.
Yes, yeah. So this was my first time to ever actually take peptides. It was my first time. Um and you know, I think it all started when I shared something on my close friend's story about I went for a run and I fell and I like the whole right side of my body was hurting really bad. And so I had this like nagging glute injury and also my shoulder. And it was like, I'm somebody that works with the body and I work with fascia, and I was struggling so much that it was affecting my work. And it was like I needed something beyond what I had in my power. And so what I did notice is I think the biggest, outside from reduction of pain, is my sleep was so good. And because my sleep was so good, it was better than it had been for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's because it was because I was getting relief from the pain, especially in my shoulder. My nervous
Mhm.
system was able to relax even more, and I was getting more restful sleep. And that was like a snowball effect. I got a little bit leaner. Like I felt um like a super version of myself, if that makes sense. Um, and so, yeah, it kind of opened the door for me for uh, what is it, a peptide protocol that you had me on, or like, what, how do you call
Mhm.
it?
Yeah, yeah. I put you on a peptide protocol. Just, you know, I put you on the typical healing peptides and then a growth hormone secretagogue. Just knowing, I just made a post about it. How it's just, if you have your foundation right, you're eating right, you're getting into the sun, you're doing what you can to be, have sleep. You're even doing like the internal work. You are a perfect candidate because you're just going to amplify what you already are, and you
That's
clearly do.
exactly what it was. It was an amplification. It was an
Hmm.
amplification of myself. I felt just like, oh, you know how like when you microdose with psilocybin, it's
Hmm.
like it kind of just unlocks. It's so subtle, but it
Hmm.
unlocks your brain in a different way. I felt
Hmm.
like that's kind of how it felt in my body. It was like just like kind of, oh, I have a little, it was subtle, but it affected me across all planes, all dimensions of my life. And
Yeah.
so it really, I think the pain relief though, it was very, very welcomed. It was very, very welcomed because it had been a long time since I had experienced like something chronically painful.
Hmm.
Um, and so it helped me a lot. And so yeah. And is that like a common thing where like when you educate people on like peptide protocols, do you feel like the main message is like this will work for you if you're already optimal, if you're already practicing the things that make you feel good on a regular basis? Like, do you have people that feel like it's going to be the thing that kind of cures the everything?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a constant conversation saying like you still have to do the lifestyle. I mean, the beauty of it is if they don't have it perfect, they'll often still notice improves. But I mean, there are some of the more subtle ones that are really powerful when you've got your foundation right, and you may really not notice it at all if you're not. If you're still just drinking, burning at both ends, you're less likely to notice it. But it's we send a protocol every time. I think I sent you one through my EMR too, where it's just like some different supplement suggestions, some movement patterns that can help, and it has to be supported. It's not gonna be a cure all. So.
Yeah. And I guess that's true for everything, like
Hmm.
it's definitely true for everything. But it all, what also feels important is that um, I think we tend to get used to our baseline of a state of being as like this
Yeah.
is just how I feel on a regular basis, and mm, you know you just get used to whatever pain you have, and you're like, this is just how I feel now. Especially with I
Hmm.
think the programming of like as you get older, things just hurt more, and you just don't feel as good. So it kind of refreshed my baseline
Yeah.
of, oh, this is how I can feel actually. It kind of I leveled it up a little bit and gave me this ability to, oh, I was feeling this way because I had just gotten kind of used to the pain I was experiencing.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was like an elevation of like, okay, I can actually feel a lot better. And even though it's subtle, this is my sleep can really be good and I can feel pretty refreshed waking up in the morning.
Very cool. Well, when you're full ready, we can play around with some other ones that are completely different, but no rush. Um, I was going to end it with one. It's not exactly going to be a shocking question, but I do think it will be very good advice to anyone that's a little younger or not quite as far along the journey as you. And we've got 39-year-old Celeste. What would she tell that 23, 26-year-old girl who is a little bit in survival mode, but actually succeeding?
Ugh. Like these kind of questions, like the first thing that pops in my head is like, would this version of me at 23, 15, 16 years ago be able to actually receive this? And
Yeah.
probably not, but we we receive what we can. So my what I would tell that version of myself is to, and I don't even know how I would say it, but something like to have more trust in my own process, like to have more trust in my own creative process, to have more trust in, and to also take creative risks. I was so scared to try different things in the ring in terms of like my wrestling style or with my wrestling gear or makeup, because I was so afraid of um, like ruffling feathers or being not liked or getting fired or getting written out of a storyline. And that was kind of the culture there. Like it was just like a lot of fear. You know,
Yeah.
you could, it was kind of tumultuous having Vince walking around all the time backstage. Like you could get fired, you know, like you just never knew. And so there was this very fear-based way of operating as a
Hmm.
performer when I was there. And then I just didn't have a lot of confidence in myself because I was such a novice at professional wrestling in general. And I
Yeah.
think that made me feel like a novice in life. And so I think really the advice would be to have more trust in who I am and what I'm capable of, because I was obviously at this, you know, unbelievable place in life, this opportunity that most people would never get, and I embraced it and I took the, you know, I was still doing that, but I think if I, and this is true for everybody in every situation, if I
Mhm.
knew what I know now, then my career would have looked so different. I would have taken more risks creatively. I would have, you know, I would have said the thing and not been pushed around and had more boundaries but you know, that's part of growing up. That's part of,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how you learn. But yeah, it's like take more creative risks.
Yeah. Very fair. And, there may be someone that hears this and it matters. And in my own journey, like I'll think back on what different men who I respected, but I was not listening to them, told me different advice. And at the right moment, those words would come back to me and they would save me. So you never know. And sometimes I
Yeah.
swear I hear an older version of Dodge saying things like, keep going, you've got this. So it's
Yes.
interesting. And then I guess we could probably keep going for a really long time, but we better call it quits and we'll just have to do it again. But how
Yeah,
do
we'll
we
do another
find
one.
how do we find you? What are the best ways to get a hold of you?
So most everything that I'm doing, work creatively, events, in-person stuff, you can find it on my Instagram, which is my name, Celeste Bonin. There is lots of cool stuff in the link in my bio. And then if you just want to check out my website, that's celeste-bonin.com. And so very soon I will be sharing with people, my followers, how to subscribe to my subscription content. Well, there's gonna be a little bit of something for everybody there. And that's coming soon. But yeah, Instagram is my main channel. I'm dabbling in YouTube, and you can find all the links there in my profile.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on here. I really enjoyed it. And, from here, thank you for listening to Biology of Becoming. We'll talk to you soon.